Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you so much for being here. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Elise Santani, and I'm the Business Development Manager for the Concierge Team, formerly known as the Uphoff Team. So just to get us started, I want to go over a couple of housekeeping items. There's one rule for today. It's super simple. No bullshit. Okay? This is a bullshit-free zone. If you read any of the probably what feels like hundreds of emails that I've been sending you and texting you, spoiler alert, that was me behind the screen. I'm so sorry. Thank you for not unsubscribing. But if you've read any of those, then you've heard the words vulnerable and candid and honest. And we mean that. We want to get real today. None of us are going to stand up here and tell you about how great we are. We're not going to tell you that business is great and this year has been wonderful, and we're not going to say that it was easy. Our biggest thing that we want to do for you is provide incredible value. That has always been our number one goal. And today we want to do that by creating a safe space to have an honest dialogue. We don't want you to leave here and not have any tangible tactics and tricks and things that you can use in the real world, right? We all could use a little extra help and learn a new thing or two. So when you leave here, if you have not left with something that you can actually use and apply, I want you to email me. Payback, right? You've all have been getting tons of emails from me. So pay me back and send me an email and tell me that we did not do our job because you are not using any of the things that you've learned here today. I want those emails. I'm going to take your email and I'm just going to forward it to Jess and ask her to figure it out and follow up with you. So it's so simple for me. So please email me. I like to keep things simple. No bullshit. And Jess, what's the answer? Okay, so that's all that we have to do. I'm going to introduce our panel. Sorry, not our panel, our special guests. We have Kelly Moye, Stephanie Iannone, David Zalupski, Amanda Divito and Jessica Uphoff. And how this is going to kind of unfold is for the first about 45 minutes, these guys are just going to sit up here and talk as if no one else is in the room. And then after that, you guys, we want to really have a conversation with you. Let's figure out how we can collectively get this market unstuck. Okay? So to get things kicked off, I'm going to start with you, Jessica. How did we get here? I know that you and Amanda went to dinner one night. So tell me about your dinner. Tell me about why we're here. How did we get here?
You'll start? No, go ahead. Okay. So Amanda and I went to dinner. We went to the Rio. I drove to the old Rio. The Rio moved downtown, for those of you that didn't know. And I put the address in my nav because I always follow my nav. And it kept taking me to a different address. And so I was 15 minutes late. Amanda's one of my dearest partners. I adore her. I felt so bad. She'd been sitting there drinking beer and eating chips and salsa by herself. And I walk in and we jump into this dialogue about the market and how hard it is. And the biggest thing that happened that night is we got a big bet. So we decided at the end of the night that we had a bet. Amanda said rates would be in the double digits by March. Okay. And I said I thought rates would be in the 5s by March. And so we had a really different opinion. And what we decided is that we would take each other, whoever lost that bet would take each other to a spa day. So she just sat down next to me. The other thing she pointed out is she said, you were right, rates have peaked. And she brought a little graph to show me why I was right. And I was like, cool, can we just get that out in the open for everyone to hear? So this was our dream child. We were talking about the market.
Jess was right.
We were talking about the market and the struggles in the market in each of our businesses, and that the market's stuck. And we decided what would be very, very valuable to the real estate community is to talk candidly amongst a bunch of professionals in different aspects of the market or sectors of the market. So from a lender perspective, from a builder perspective, from an agent perspective, and have some of the top professionals in Denver talk about what's really going on and not try to sugarcoat it with our accolades or anything like that. We did list our accolades on the materials for the event today, but that was mostly just so you know that we are industry professionals. But we really are here today to just talk candidly about our businesses and also dive into some topics that everyone knows that is an issue in our current real estate environment, such as this builder realtor dynamic that we have and some other things going on. So that was my intent for today, was just to talk to all of you with an audience watching. And then the second part of the discussion, we're going to include the audience in the discussion. And I think we're going to get some really good data out and thoughts out and tangible tactics, as Elise mentioned. So you guys ready? Okay. All right. Well, Amanda,
Yes.
you told me the market's stuck. This concept was something that you were like, it's stuck, it's gridlocked.
Yeah.
So explain that to me from an agent perspective.
Well, I mean, just as a practitioner, and for those of you who are selling real estate, you know, the sellers were sort of stuck on yesterday's prices, and the buyers are like holding out for tomorrow. And so, you know, that felt like the problem, you know, particularly, you know, 30 days ago even, where I felt like people were they were locked up and afraid. We know seasonally that happens, right? This time of year is a quiet time of year. We know election years tend to bring this sort of scare or fear tactic. So as we came into the fall, we were heading into an election season. And anybody who tells you that this election is the most important election of their life is full shit. So, you know, so then that stuff comes and goes. And then we all kind of breathed, took a big breath perhaps, but rates were peaking right then. So I actually went back and said, when were they the highest this year? And they were the highest October 24th through February 4th at 7.37.
Through February 4th?
I'm sorry, November 4th.
November.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I think the market's loosening up a little bit. I think some of that's expectation. Some of that's just normalization or readjusting our mindsets and our mentalities. And I think the agents had as much adjusting to do as the consumers did, you know, so.
I think sellers are you want to say kind of stuck in the past on prices and buyers stuck in the fear of the future. But sellers actually kind of have a legitimate issue. And that is that they've got a 2.875 interest rate right now that is really hard to give up. And even if it doesn't matter, you know, how much coaching, even if they say, yeah, I get it, I need to price to the comps that were 60 days ago, not 6 months ago, and they're on board, they still have a payment problem about moving. I had someone the other day who called, they actually bought a house a year ago, and she said, Kelly, the house is too big for us. We don't even use the bottom level. This is silly, and the yard doesn't work. We need to move. Well, normally any other time I would have listed the house, they'd already be in the new one and we'd be set. But their interest rate is so low and the new one was so high that the payment was more for the smaller house. And they kind of said, well, maybe we'll just shut the door to the basement and just won't clean it and we'll live with it. And now they're not moving. So I think they have a legitimate sort of reason as to why they're kind of stuck in the house they're in, and then they don't move. And that's part of the problem. I mean, there's the gridlock.
I saw this coming when I was pre-approving people during the pandemic, when rates are in the 2s and 3s. I was telling every client I was meeting with, be prepared to get stuck in this house. So buy a house that you'd be comfortable getting stuck in, because when you go to buy your next one, your next move up, prices will be higher and rates will be higher because we will never be returning. This is an unprecedented rate that you're getting, or unprecedented rate, you know? And so you're going to get stuck in this house. And that's exactly what's happened, is that the majority of folks that own a home have an interest rate below 3.5%.
Right.
I think it's going to make it really interesting as we get into the busier season to see what happens to our inventory because of exactly what you're saying. Like, are we actually going to have more of an inventory problem, which is going to keep our prices somewhat steady. I mean, so sellers are stuck, but at the same time, they may not see a lot of, price deflation just because we're not going to have much inventory as soon as the buyers are ready to come back. I mean, if you ask me every July how the market is, I'm like, it's done. The market's done. It's over, going into the fall. And then it picks up again. And then you ask me in October, is the market done? It's done. It's over. This is it, and it's been like that for 10 years. So I guess I'm still pretty positive about what's going to happen in the first quarter of next year. So even though I think I feel less stuck now than I did when we were first talking about this, but I think nobody knows. It's going to be interesting to see, how that lower inventory from sellers not wanting to sell because, the dreamers, as Amanda and I talk about, you have the dreamers who are always dreaming about their next move or, what the future holds, but they don't really have to move, and I think for those people, we have to just get really creative to help them find their dream. And it may not be what we've done, in the past, like 5 to 7 years, but, they are still dreaming and we're still going to help them, get their dream maybe by doing something more creative than what we have been.
We talk about, I talk about pillow time. And it's this moment when, spouses lay down together and it's their executive time in their marriage. A lot of times is pillow time, right? Like, okay, what do you want to do with the kids? What do you want to do with the house? What do you want to do with life? And pillow time through COVID was very opportunistic because they'd lay down and go, I love you, let's have another baby. I hate you, let's get divorced. I miss my mom, let's move to Indiana, right? Like, so these things happen at pillow time. And then they'd wake up and call Jess and she'd be like, and you can move with a rate at 2.875. And they were like, bingo. And so there was this sort of motivation coupled with ability, right? This very opportunistic market. And I think the problem is that pillow time doesn't go away. So when they lay down and say, I hate you, let's get divorced. I love you, let's have another baby. I want to move to Indiana to be near my mom. That stuff's still happening. And so that's the stuff we have to hang our hats on, is that's all still coming. That Jace Glick calls it living, loving, and dying. But it sounds better coming from him because he's this big, tall cowboy and his hat's as high as the ceiling. And so, he just live, loving, and dying, but that's the truth. And that's where the market's going to continue to feed us and continue to be, have fruit on it, to bear fruit, right? Like there are deals out there because people still have desire. It makes it really hard when they can't afford the payment or when they wake up and the rate isn't 2.875, but
This is just like a dichotomy that I see as you were talking about this, that we're talking about moving into a housing recession. And some people have talked about that. I disagree, but still a lot of people say that. And we talk about prices going down because we start to see all these price reductions and we have these obvious issues that we already know about. But then we have this inventory issue. And in 31 years of being a realtor, I haven't seen a situation where we have extraordinarily low inventory, but somehow we're in a housing recession and prices are going down. Usually it's inventory, it's supply and demand. It's not rocket science to figure out that if you don't have enough houses for the people who need them, the prices go up. So then that leaves me with what is going to happen next year? Like you have NAR saying housing prices will go up maybe 1%, maybe. And then you have other people predicting maybe 3%, like a little bit, but maybe not a lot. And then others saying we're going down. And I can't figure this out. Like if you have this low inventory because no one's moving because their interest rate's too low for the next payment, but you still have buyers, you still have people living, loving, and dying who need to move. I'm thinking the prices are going up, but I would love to hear all of your opinions about so what does next year look like? Because we have this, oh my gosh, we're tanking. And then we have, wait a second, we have no inventory, but people still want to move here. So it's like two different ways of looking at the market.
I'm loving just listening to this, hearing your perspective on you get to see the vulnerability of your buyers or our buyers, your sellers, much more than we do. We have to dig a lot harder to generally get that vulnerability from them. And so it's great to hear how they're thinking right now. But you're right. The data to me isn't making sense versus supply and demand. And so the simple way to look at it is rates are the key. Rates are the fear that are keeping people stuck. And I don't think we think we're going to be getting back into the twos, definitely. probably shouldn't even be in the 3s. I think a healthy interest rate is between the 4s and the 5s historically. It's actually very low. But the way we're looking at it is I do believe that once rates stabilize down into the 5s, that we're going to have a wave of people coming into the market. And I think we get stuck locally. I think we're looking locally and we're saying, oh, these people are moving within Colorado. And that's definitely happening a lot. But this is a very enticing state to be in, an area to be in. I think I'm seeing a lot from California. I don't know if you all are seeing that. A lot of relocation, Texas as well. And so we're seeing Illinois, greater Chicago area. Price is all relative. Value is all relative. They're coming from 1,300 square foot homes that are over $1 million.
Well, they're coming from $26,000 a year in property tax.
Exactly.
So they're like,
value
here's
and
what the rate is. I'm
affordability.
not paying taxes anymore.
And they can work remotely now, which is a new dynamic that we just have had in the last couple of years.
We're affected. Our prices are much more affected by the actual land cost and cost to build than the resale market, obviously, right? These homes were built decades ago in some instances, and they're really flowing with what is the market, supply and demand, leverage, seller versus buyer. Ours has a lot to do with cost. And so what we have pivoted to, and we saw this coming probably late May, early June. I have a couple of my salespeople in here right now, and they can tell you the same thing, is we started dropping prices as rates went up. And it wasn't a panic. It was about trying to balance out buying power, because we consider ourselves a market builder. We want to sell homes at what the market will bear, but we want to keep a certain amount of homes moving, bringing people in to being able to purchase and build wealth, as Jessica talks about a lot. And if rates are going up, that's killing their buying power. So we're going to bring prices down to try to balance out that rate. And we've been very aggressive in doing so.
I've got a question for you. So talk to me a little bit about like land plays, land opportunities, what the builders are going to do in this sort of scarcity environment of land opportunities. Or is that just my false opinion? Or is it just I live way too close to Golden to realize there's any new construction anywhere?
It's a great question. And I tell you, each builder is going to be different. I think we'll talk more about this, but it's going to come down to just like human beings. What's your appetite for risk and what do you believe the future holds? We believe that this country, as well as this state especially, has a lot more to bear.
Yeah.
And it is a great place to be. And so we actually own 13,000 home sites in the state of Colorado. Right?
Is that right?
That's more than anybody, than any builder. All the way down to, Elizabeth, Castle Rock area, all the way up to Fort Collins and everywhere in between.
Yeah, but none in Arvada, I know.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
we own 20 lots in Arvada, 91 coming,
20.
and a lot more. And that'll be great.
20.
But it really comes down to their appetite for risk. You're going to see there's a builder, I won't mention, that pretty much doesn't build spec homes. I'm sure one of you is willing to mention that if you know who they are. So they start with an R and with a D. I don't know. But,
Richmond. Yeah, I heard they sold all of their land in Colorado. Is that a rumor?
I believe that's a rumor,
Okay.
but they're very risk averse. They're not going to build a home until you've sold it. Right now, they're talking about 10 to 12 months to build it. They're extremely risk averse. So they're probably going to back off of land they have under contract. And they're not going to start building out early, whereas we are opening up 6 new communities in the next 60 days. And that's happening. So I think we feel positively that this is a time and a place, and it is just a point in time at this time. And then in whether it's March, June, September, that as rates come down, that unfortunately, I think there's going to be, and fortunately, there's going to be a big swing back to the extreme again. I think you're going to be in bidding wars again.
So do you think, David, because I feel like at the beginning of COVID, all the builders kind of like took a pause, which fueled the craziness that we saw, because then we had such a lack of supply because the builders really put the brakes on and there was nothing to buy. I mean, I remember when we used to be able to go to any builder and they had 3 or 4 spec homes that we could, get our buyers into. And then there was nothing because everybody really stopped during COVID and then we came up short. Do you see that happening again right now where builders are like, okay, we're pulling the brakes back again. And then as soon as the rates catch up, we're going to be in the same exact crazy market that we were? That's
Simply, I absolutely do.
Yeah.
We're going to limit,
Yeah.
we're going to limit supply. And again, when rates stabilize, buyers will flood into the market and there's not going to be a supply. And then instead of a healthy market, we're back into bidding wars. Great thing about builders is there are no bidding wars. If you pay full price, then you get the home.
I just
So-
had one. No, I just had one. I just had one.
Oh, at Dream Finder, okay.
Oh, no, they
Finder,
figured it out. They were watching us. They were
Yeah.
like, what are they?
Starts
Oh,
with
I'm doing that.
RNTP.
Yeah, yeah.
They're doing it now.
We do not do bidding.
Or they were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but also it's okay. You know, we got used to it. We figured it out.
We know how to do it. We know how to do it better than you guys do it.
I know. I agree.
Are you guys focused more on multifamily versus single family now? Because
Or
I'm
attached.
curious. Yeah, just because land costs and/or you think that's where the market is. Because I'm kind of wondering from a supply and
Can I
demand.
tee that up for you though, just a
Yeah.
second?
Please.
NAR put some policies in place 15 years ago, and they were very heavily pushing the 15-minute neighborhood. NAR wanted the walking neighborhood.
So do buyers.
Well, they think they do, except then, but they actually then don't.
Just like where we are right here in Broward.
Of course they do.
Yeah.
So they want, everybody says they want a coffee shop. Everybody says they wanted, I mean, this was like in the 90s when we were doing like formal living rooms and dining rooms, and then everybody said they wanted a great room, except they bought the house with the formal living room and the dining room. So, the consumers say they want this walkability. And so we went heavy on the multifamily. And COVID was a contrarian market. So COVID was like, I don't want to touch the same elevator button as that other guy anymore. And so people did this mass out migration where we would been pushing this urban climate, this multifamily, the 15-minute walking neighborhood leading into COVID. And then the condo buyers downtown moved to the Highlands because that felt like room for them. And the Highlands buyers moved to Arvada because that felt like room to them. And the Arvada buyers moved to Steamboat because that felt like room to them. And the Steamboat buyers went to Cody, Wyoming.
Right.
And they were like, bye. Everybody literally left their current environment. And that's part of the other pillow time thing that happened for us, is that there was this huge desire to get out of your current situation.
Yeah.
But NAR's pushing multifamily. Now pick it up.
They don't want to pay Metro District taxes either, by the way.
The buyers.
A lot of the buyers don't want to pay Metro taxes. And
Right.
that infrastructure comes with
Right.
a bond and a lot of taxes to be paid. So
That was the
Well,
municipalities
you have
cowarding
that,
out.
you have that without, so I'd say you have that without multifamily being the predominant type of home in there. You've got your master plan communities, Kinston and Centera, Baseline coming off of Baseline, Sterling Ranch being a big one that have those type of walkabilities, brew pub, coffee shop. Now, it may not be to this extent, but that's the other thing. So to answer your question, are we going more towards multifamily? I'd say we're going more towards affordability. Land costs had gotten so high after COVID, so everything just gets passed down the line, right?
Yeah.
There's raw land bought by somebody, whether it's a developer, builder, something like that, and then they pay someone or they develop it themselves, and more cost is added to that. And then there's finished lots that builders buy, and there's more cost added to that. And then you have to build the home on it, and there's more cost added to that. And that all gets translated to who? Our buyers, right? So when land costs are higher and development costs are higher, and it's hard to get labor and materials, everything has been exacerbated and there's no affordability. That's why you're seeing 10 years ago, maybe a 60-foot wide lot was the norm with builders, go to a 50-foot wide lot 4 years ago to a 40-foot wide lot now in multifamily. And it's not just because we want to create density and just make more money. I'm sure there are some people that want to do that. It's about how much the land is costing. If I showed you from one phase to the next in a master plan community of what we were buying lots for, they're about 55, 60% higher in an 18-month span. So, I mean, we are a for-profit company. I will admit this. We don't build for practice.
Right.
So if we can't make money and you say, oh, you were selling these for 400 2 years ago, and now you're trying to sell them for 550, you're trying to make, you're too greedy. Well, the cost of land went up almost exponentially.
Well, we're all trying to make money, but I'm going to put you on the spot a little
Yeah.
bit because we had a really great conversation before we started where I said, I thanked him for being here because it's so nice to have a builder who wants to get in the conversation with realtors because we're all a team. We're all trying to do the same thing. And I said, what's up with the commission thing? Like first you're at 3, then you're at 2, then you're at 1. And I said, and what happens? And this is the no bullshit part where I'm just like, for real, what's going to happen? What happens is you all do that when the timing is good. and you're shooting fish in a barrel and people are walking in model homes and you're like selling them like crazy. Then the market turns and you're like, oh, realtor bonus. Oh, we'll send you to Mexico. Oh, we'll do this. And I'm like, why don't we just all appreciate and pay each other all the time?
I'm going to put him on the spot, but I'm going to lay some context down for the listeners. In 1983, there were 6 realtors and 6 builder friends in a hot tub in Aurora, and they were friends. And the realtor said exactly to the builder what you just said, which is like, can't we just like work together all the time? And born from that hot tub was the Builder Realty Council. BRC was founded here in Denver. It is an organization that is a builder and realtor friendly cooperation agreement. And the agreement made in the hot tub that night was, if you bring them on the first visit, and we will pay you. And if they walk in without you, we don't have to technically. And so they laid out sort of these guidelines that said,
and one more, that if you the house isn't less if you're not working with a realtor. You can't sell that.
Two-price policy.
Yeah, you can't sell, the builder can't sell the house, say, well, if you have a realtor, the house is X, and if you don't, it's Y.
That's right.
So that was key.
And that was key because people were walking in and saying, hey, I'm unrepresented. Can you sell me the house for a deal? And they said, well, I had built. So, a lot of builders build the fee for service into their budget.
Correct.
So BRC basically said, all of you realtors pay a small due each year. I think even now it's $199. So it's $99, right? And then the builders come in and they pay their $99. And together we were supposed to be cooperating and compensating. Okay. Why did that change?
I can't speak for others, but I'll tell you exactly what we did and give the reasoning why we did it, and understand that some people aren't going to accept that or agree with it. And I want to think back to the time that we were in. Again, like I mentioned earlier, we build homes at what they cost with who we have to build them, and that is how home prices are set, all in for us. Whereas the resale market is the swings of the market. And at the time of COVID coming through, you're right, we had a month lull of nothing. It was the end of March through April, essentially, of 2020, was probably one of the worst sales months I've ever seen in new home construction until the last couple of months. And then it was an explosion, right? And we can get into all the supply chain issues. And I'm sure you all watch the news and hear these things and you kind of roll your eyes a little bit and think like, hey, are they really being honest? Is it really that bad? It was beyond things that I can ever describe. We were picking up U-Hauls and driving all the way to Minnesota to pick out 10 different Home Depots and air conditioning supply stores to find air duct to put into homes because there was none in the state of Colorado. And literally our VP of construction was driving a Ryder van picking up air conditioning duct. We couldn't get garage doors. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but it wasn't just not being able to get things, not knowing when homes could finish, not thinking we had the quality of labor that we needed. The costs were becoming astronomical, and
should have done those bidding wars.
But again, we have certain things that we don't believe in, and we don't believe in that. And you're right, some other builders do. They'll do lotteries, I've seen, and crazy things like that. But that's not what we believe in. And so with prices going up astronomically and things changing on a dime, and you probably all saw it if you're going to communities, is one day it was $599, the next day it was $609, the next day it was $619. And logistically, it was impossible for us to keep up with, and changing prices everywhere, every day. And in the end, we just had to look at certain things and you go, if you don't know what it costs to build, you can't sell it. And certain builders, I know you all know, decided they didn't know what it cost to build, and they stopped selling homes, which, to your point, exacerbated the situation of supply. And so the way we look at it is, what is more beneficial to the market? 3% of nothing, meaning if everybody pulls back, they don't know what they can make, they're not going to build homes. They're going to pull back, or they're going to sell 3 homes a month and put a quota on it. what we decided what was best was we're going to protect ourselves a little bit. We're going to pull back on the commission to 2%, which is a big hit. Don't get me wrong, I understand. But what that will enable us to do is to open up more home sites for sale, to create more sales opportunities for realtors to make up that difference.
Mhm.
And everyone I talked to, I tried to explain, this is a point in time.
Yeah.
This is temporary. And it doesn't mean that we think you're less valuable than you were before. It's that we are afraid that we might be making a mistake by opening things up, but we are also afraid of limiting the supply in this market, which will make the situation worse. So we tried to open up more specs and more. We were carrying through that time 10 specs per community, not 3 to 4. And we were opening up dirt sales and selling into the future, taking on a huge risk that a home could literally cost us $30,000 to $40,000 more over the time it takes to build that home. Because remember, you're not closing in 30 to 45 days.
Well, right.
Like
And
in 6
that's
months.
why,
That's a huge risk.
Yeah,
So we had to
totally.
minimize some of that risk
Mhm.
temporarily, but we jumped back to 3 very quickly.
you know, the other thing builders were doing in the marketplace was that they weren't pricing their houses up front. And you know,
Pricing and what's
they weren't pricing them up front. You know, if it's a dirt start,
Okay.
this
Yeah,
house
come
isn't
in.
done in 8
Yeah.
months. We'll talk about price when the house is done, you know. And I couldn't begrudge you that.
In their contracts. That's the
Couple,
first time
and
I've ever seen that.
we did put the escalator in
you?
our contract. One of the most uncomfortable things I've ever had to talk to realtors about and
Yeah.
personal buyers. I'm sure my salespeople here would agree that we just tried to explain to them, look, this is going to be there. This is a protection. We have no anticipation in doing this, and we do not want to do it. And guess who had to make those calls to buyers and realtors? Hopefully none of you in here I had to call about this, but we had to call about 8 or 9, and because it was just untenable.
Yeah.
And that's the risk of opening up lots with, if we sell a home and we say it's going to be 6 to 7 months until it's ready to close and we're willing to sell it, we're taking a guess.
Yeah.
Because we don't know what it's going to cost, and otherwise we can't sell it. You know
Is
what I
that why
mean?
you transitioned to just all spec pretty much?
Pretty much. We transitioned to all spec for a couple of reasons. Protection. I'm deciding what goes in the homes, looking at being value oriented, and that we can start to know what it's going to cost us to build this, so we can start projecting with a certain margin what we need to sell it for. And we were an undersupplied market. So there's still not enough of them in Colorado.
Yeah.
So
Not to mention, you know, utility.
mhm.
One of the conversations we have a lot is about just the water resources here. I mean, it's a big problem
Mhm.
in Colorado.
Absolutely.
Well,
Getting
I
water rights.
appreciated your answer when we were talking earlier, because it's a business decision, it sounds like, where you needed to cut costs, and we were one of those costs, and we get that. We've had to do that before. I just always found it kind of interesting to watch the builders ebb and flow in their relationship with us. Whereas when I look at it, and this is what you and I were talking about, which is why I so appreciate your answer, was that you know, we create relationships with our clients and we stay steady with them and give them the same service regardless of what the time or the market might be. And you create relationships with us. So we're all kind of in this together. And it just seems like we should all support each other through the thick and thin. And I understood your answer and I appreciated it, just because it always seems like the builders are so fickle.
Mhm.
You know, like, oh, the market's great. Yeah, we don't need you.
You know, that's I think about, you know, the real estate agents are providing a service to the end consumer, and that it never felt like that the builder should have been taking the fee for service as the negotiating piece, that it should have ultimately just gone on to the consumer in the end. You know, ultimately the consumers were paying to borrow more money to pay for the increase in costs.
Right.
You know, and so I guess I just see us as sort of one of the vendors in the transaction. And I'm guessing builders
Fair.
probably had a big downward pressure on a lot of their vendors in the transaction, but you know, I just see us as more of a service provider inside the transaction when we accompany the buyer to your sales office.
Sure.
And if we aren't accompanying the buyer to the sales office, shame on us.
Yeah, then we're not.
I don't want to set a bad precedent for you all,
Yeah.
but
It happens a lot.
if the customer truly has a realtor, and even if they're not there for whatever reason, you all are doing a bunch of things, you're very busy, we have never not paid a realtor. It's in our contract that you must be there on the first visit, but we've also, I have a pretty good BS detector.
Yeah.
And I generally know when you're full of it, when 3 weeks later, you're like, oh, I'm representing them. You need to pay me. I'll tell you to F off in some way. I'll be honest,
We
but
can't control our buyers all the time.
they
It's
show
like-
up, right?
It's like you work with them for 3 years and they're, you're trying to find them a place and then they're not sure. And then they do this and then that. And all of a sudden on their own, they leave out on a Saturday. I mean, we don't know where they are, and all of a sudden they show up
You don't have
at one
GPS
different place.
tags
I'm like,
on
I need GPS tag on everybody. And it is very nice when builders understand that, yeah, sometimes buyers show up without us knowing.
It's
But
really helpful if you coach them. I mean, let them know, hey, if you come in, you're going to get registered. I mean, just mark the yes.
yeah,
I
just
mean,
register us.
Tell them I've got a realtor. Hey, you can give them 25 cards when you meet with them. Like,
Right.
whatever you can do to help. But we should be asking, are you working with a realtor? 100%. And if we're doing our jobs, we're going to know that. And if they say yes, they are. Now, if they say no, then, something went wrong somewhere, guys.
Then
And,
we do our job. Yeah.
there's, and I think that's what we want I want my team to be professionals. That is what we are working on. We are flexing muscles we have not had to flex in years, right? And it's time, and that's exciting to an extent, right? Yeah, I want to sell a lot more homes, but it is exciting to be curious again and digging in, and instead of like, hey, home's over there, or, hey, if you don't buy it today, somebody else is. Those times came with their own challenges. Trust me, that was probably some of the hardest we ever worked during the crazy times, but right now is more fruitful and it's more engaging, and we're learning more about the dissatisfaction that our mutual clients have and how strong that urgency is. And is that rate holding them back? How much is it holding them back? And if their dissatisfaction with their current situation is not beyond what holds them in that rate, they aren't going anywhere.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so,
I think that one of the keys to getting the market unstuck is that collaboration between professionals that you just spoke of. What I watched happen in COVID, and I know we were all rugged, like we were all run very rugged, like the people that doing a lot of business, like I was working around the clock, literally 70 hours a week during COVID, explaining to my young children and husband that you got to make hay when the sun shines, right? And I know a lot of my partners in the room were working their tails off, like just totally exhausted by the market. And I think that we developed, we just started responding to each other in a little bit more adversarial way, buyers agents and listing agents, builders and agents. And I think we developed habits that are not serving us well today.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Like what?
I think we need to work more collaboratively. I think like builder sales reps and real estate agents need to work together. I think agents show up to builders and act very adversarial, even if their buyer doesn't feel that way. They feel like it's their job to beat that builder down and get them the best deal. And they've got this buyer that wants to buy a home. And they're not even willing to work collaboratively with the sales agent and the builder. And I think you'll get actually a better deal on behalf of your buyer if you show up and you act professional and you work with the sales rep and you explain the dynamic of what's going on with your buyer. And you say, hey, my buyer can afford a $3,000 a month payment, and the lender is telling him it's $3,700, and they really love the house, but I'm not sure what's possible. Do you have any ideas or solutions that might work for my buyer so they can buy a home? Because I work closely with Dream Finders Homes, I know that a lot of agents are killing deals, and agents are starving for business right now. And you're like making it worse on yourself and your buyer by showing up in an adversarial way with the builder's agents. It's like, let's show up and actually work together. And the same thing with listing agents and buyer's agents. I think there's been a real shift in dynamic to where listing agents became,
Oh, they were God Kings.
like,
my God.
and
Right.
and I understand the pain of a listing agent when you had that many offers and so many texts and, you were overwhelmed.
I mean, what a problem, right?
I mean,
Right.
and we were all on both sides of that, though, where we, as a buyer's agent, trying to get an offer in the last 2 years, you call the listing agent and be their best friend. I mean, he's like, what can I do for you? I'll call you at any time, whenever you're available. I won't only take a second. I will. I mean, it was just like, do you want me to text? Would you rather have me text? Would you rather have me call? And then the listing agent, we've all been on the other side. We're like, oh my God, are you kidding? There's 20 phone calls that I have to return right now. I mean, we've all been on both sides, and it was a mess.
But I think it's common courtesy in today's world, because what I'm experiencing or noticing in the market is agents are just not responding to each other. And it's like common courtesy of how did the showing go with your buyer?
Right.
You know, can you give us feedback? Like, I think that's what's going on.
My dad said you return a phone call even if it's an 800 number.
Even if
Oh,
it's
wow.
800 number.
Even if it's an 800 number. But that was just the
calls.
way we were all raised, right? You return people's phone calls.
I have to say, I really appreciate the collaboration that's going on now, because I definitely have seen a swing in that, to the extent that now, we're working together a lot more, working through transactions that have contingencies, working through, we're getting creative, and we have to collaborate to get that. I closed a transaction yesterday, and the agent who I knew called and said, I've got these dreamers and they're talking on their pillow, and they don't want to drive so far to school, but they have a house to sell. And so we have a conversation about it, and then we're like, okay, let's give it a shot. What else do we have to do? And then it works and it closes. And we have to be open to those creative transactions these days, and working with our fellow agents to make them happen.
Think about what we can tell our buyers right now, that you can get a home you want. You can get it for a lower price, and there are more creative solutions, whether that's contingencies or buying down interest rates or 2-1 buy downs. They can get something they want at a low price, and people are willing to be creative and flexible and solve problems and work together. You cannot refinance a home price. You can always refinance an interest rate. So if we believe that interest rates are going to come down at some point next year, they get a home they like with creative financing, creativity, maybe a contingency that helps them out at
Are
a
you
great
taking
price.
contingencies now?
I am absolutely taking contingency. I try to make common sense of a deal.
Yeah.
Now, if there's 8 other variables that are crazy,
Yeah.
the contingency is not the one that closes it. Hopefully the home's not finished. It depends on the situation that we're looking at, but absolutely.
Okay.
And I have a question about the interest rate thing. Truly, this is just something I
Mhm.
don't understand as well as I'd like, so maybe you would know. But when we talk about interest rates coming down, I mean, it's been such a long time since we've seen them go up and come down. I'm trying to remember the last time. It's been a
Well,
long
for the
time.
decade of 2000 or 2010 to 2020,
Right.
our average rate was 4%.
Exactly. So it's all been about 4 for the last 10 years, right?
Yeah.
So what happens? Can a rate come down that fast? Like,
Yes.
does the Fed literally reduce rates that quickly from, say, January 2023 to June of 2023?
Well, the Fed is changing the federal funds rate.
Right.
And then the mortgage-backed securities market is adjusting.
It is
accordingly.
adjusted according to that.
So
right?
mortgage rates go with inflation. So if inflation comes down
Then we
at an
actually
aggressive rate,
realistically,
mortgage rates will come down. It's already happened, right? Like,
we're
Amanda was
At
saying.
6.5
right.
Justice
last
right
week.
page.
Yeah.
That
I
was-
already feel
So
low.
on
I
the
feel
Justice
low.
Right page, mortgage rates peaked at 7.39, and now just a handful of weeks later, we're in the mid 6s, right?
Mhm.
So we've already experienced, and that was because our inflation numbers came out
and they were lower.
for
They were-
1 month. They
Right.
came out better. They're going to come out again better.
So it
the-
is feasible that actually could happen if inflation continues to go.
This Fed hike that's going to happen this next week is going to be a smaller hike than what we've experienced in the 3 hikes prior. The inflation numbers that are announced next week are going to be, and we have some inflation numbers coming out on Friday of this week. We have inflation numbers coming out next week. We're going downhill.
Yeah.
Like, we are for sure on our way down quickly, in my opinion.
So that's going to unstick the market.
It is, but I think that it took us so long to adjust to where we are right now. And I think it's going to take time to adjust to where we're going. And I think agents aren't ready. I think, in my personal opinion, we have a media problem. I think that the media is making our consumer population confused about what's going on, but they've been saying we have a market crash that's coming. And they've been saying that for how long? More a decade?
Oh, I
Yeah.
guess it's
Yeah,
like in the
the
business
market is going to crash. There's no way that these numbers are sustainable, but it is a supply issue. We have more households forming than we have homes being built. And that number is widening and widening and widening, and we have a supply issue. And when the feds made the decision to keep money cheap as long as they did and pump billions of dollars into buying mortgage-backed securities for 2 years straight, that was the wrong decision for the housing market, right? And now they're trying to figure out, how do we fix this problem that we created? And they're trying to fix it and bring inflation down as quickly as they can. But the media is poisoning the consumer population of what's going on, and it's not the truth, in my opinion. And then I think the average realtor closes 8 transactions a year. That's from NAR. And I think the average realtor doesn't know how to speak the truth to their clients. And so they're scared. Their clients are scared. And so I think that's the issue of what's going on and why the market is stuck, is that industry professionals have to understand the real truth of what's going on and be able to explain it to their clients so they feel comfortable.
You know what else is interesting about that? Like, you know, when we were all kids and you watch a TV show on a Tuesday and then you got to school and everybody had watched the same TV show?
Yeah.
You know, it was like Friends or 90210 or whatever was going on in my life.
Happy days for me.
Yeah, okay, right.
I'm there with you. Yeah, like, I don't know.
Yeah, while I'm drinking water.
I was like,
But my point is right, that sort of dynamic actually gave society a cohesion that doesn't exist today, because there are 497,000 articles on Flipboard or whatever it is, and you're getting your news from Yahoo, and you're getting your news from CNN, and you're getting your news from wherever, and nobody has this sort of synergin thank you, buddy, thing. You know the one I'm talking about, where like we're all kind of like pulling for the hero that was part of yesterday's TV show that we all watched. And the only thing I think that actually technically still brings us together is NFL football, but even that I think is jaded right now. The problem is we are all thinking like a bunch of squirrels. Everybody is. So you have a media problem that is also just a human condition problem today. That is, nobody is really thinking the same way. No two people are sort of pulling in the same direction anymore. So no wonder the consumers are confused. I mean, that's how I feel about being a consumer. If I take myself out of the real estate picture and I put myself into like a car buying situation or a sweater buying situation or a vacation situation, I'm very confused. And I think the consumers are confused, and I don't exactly know how to distill that down for them.
So then I turn to Kelly,
Uh-huh.
our NAR communications expert, and say, why can't we get NAR to feed the media? Like, I sit and I look and I watch the news and I see, you know, home prices sliding, market crashing. And I'm like, where is NAR? Where is CAR? Where are they feeding the media with, this is a great time to buy? Like, why are we as brokers not demanding that they get some sort of positive messaging out there, aside from when you're on TV, because then you're very positive. But
well, actually,
like, I feel like we could do a better job.
It's super interesting
feeding that.
because, well, we being as realtors or an association or whatever, can't like push to the media. They run, I've learned this, like being on the backside of it now, I get it now. They run the stories that they want to run, and then they come to us to corroborate their story. So it's like they decide what the story's going to be. Then they reach out to you and say, you're my experts. Now just give me a quote or give me a short on-air interview so that it corroborates what I want to say.
And then I say, no, that's not the story. I don't want to
Yes,
talk
and
about
Find
so
somebody else.
that actually happened last week, where CBS wanted to do an interview. Their story was that people were moving out of Colorado because of the politics, because they didn't like their political leaders that have been elected in our most recent election. And she said, so we want to do an article about that, or a story about that. And I said, well, I'm just not seeing that. Like, I haven't had that personally. My colleagues aren't talking about it. Maybe it's because I live in the Boulder, Broomfield area and people are generally happy here. Maybe I don't, this is not a story in my mind. And she wanted to make it sound like this mass migration. Everybody was leaving Colorado because of the elections. And I just said, I hate to tell you, maybe I'm not your gal, because I don't have any data. I don't have anything to help. She said, no, I'd like to hear your side of the story. And we'll come do, so they brought the whole film crew like they always do. And they set you up and I gave them my side. And part of it was the market's actually really good. People are not moving out of Colorado. They're actually moving into Colorado, and here's the data. And I showed her all that stuff. Story never aired.
Yeah.
They killed the story. And they killed the story because it wasn't I did not.
If it didn't bleed.
It did not, yeah, it did not look good because I was disagreeing with her. And I said, I'm gonna disagree with you on air. So
Fear sells.
here, you know, and,
That's why the media.
and I
it's
just
fear.
figured I'd rather kill a story that isn't, I'd rather have that and have the story not ever show than have one that shows that's not accurate. So it is interesting to see how they do
Yeah.
it. Yeah. And we have one tomorrow on Channel 7. Let me know what y'all want me to say. I'll take notes, and let's see how many of those comments make it on the story.
So how many months of inventory do we have? I was talking to one of my partners here this morning.
I was gonna say, just ask Amanda's gonna start.
I have it.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Well,
She's
so
so good at that.
as of Monday of this week, we had 6,673 single-family detached homes in RA, Colorado, and we had 1,982 condos. So that's total inventory. And just to give you some context on this, in 2006 and 2007, in the summer of 2006 and the summer of 2007, we had 22,000 residential houses and 7,700 condos. We pulled about 17,000 residential building permits that year, those 2 years. So we had total inventory in the, 50, 60, 70,000 residential units. In April of this year, we had 1,956 houses and 556 condos for sale in all of Greater Denver. I mean, I know apartment complexes in Aurora that have that many units for sale in them. So to just to have some perspective, our inventory was that deep. Today, residential inventory is at 6,600 residences and 1,900 condos. And we're going to be lucky if we get 10,000 building permits out of the ground in the last 10 years, any year. That is a 50% undersupplied market for residential new construction. So they'd have to build double the amount of residential new construction just to get us to 20,000 new build units to try and catch the demand. And the demand didn't go away, it's just suppressed. We have 87 million millennials. We have 80 million Zs. Kelly in her lifeboat or whatever that TV show was.
Love both.
I'm sorry,
Followed by
I'm a millennial. There are only 45 million of them. Okay, that wasn't a big enough demographic. It wasn't a big enough demographic to hold up the prior recession. And that's part of what made the prior recession so difficult, was that we had such a small demographic in 45 million Gen Xers. There just weren't enough of you and Steph around. Steph's a deadhead. She wouldn't tell you, but she is. And so I look at the amount of demand coming, the amount of people who need a place to live, and we still have an inventory problem. A massive inventory problem. So, if your antidepressants aren't working right, let's get those dialed in.
Yeah, how do we get the buyers literally
We
off
gotta
their
stop with
seats?
I
fear.
can answer that.
Okay,
Okay.
please do, and you can call a couple of mine for me.
Okay.
if you would.
I would love to. I personally think that the problem in the market right now is that realtors are confused if it's a good time to buy a house, and realtors are the ones having the conversations with the consumer. Okay. And then they're saying, well, you could talk to a lender and you could buy your rate down, and realtors are trying to sell loans. They're like, oh yeah, the first year is 3% lower and the second year is 1% lower. And the buyer says, nope, I'm not interested.
Yep.
Because they immediately say, oh, it's an ARM. I don't want an ARM. I'm scared. And the realtor isn't projecting enough confidence in it's a good time to buy a house that they're even willing to hear the information about these creative financing options. So I think real estate agents need to keep it simple and say it's always a good time to buy real estate as long as you intend to hold on to it, right?
Well, real estate's a long-term investment.
It is a long-term investment. What is that saying?
Oh, it's
Time
time in the market.
Time in the market is more important than timing the market.
Yes.
Right.
Time in the market is more important than
Time in the
timing the
market.
market. Okay?
More
Well, and
important.
this is why consumers are so pissed off.
Yeah,
They're mad because they bought in April and they're like, I paid top dollar for a house.
right.
And then they're mad they didn't sell in April and they're like, should have sold then.
But I think that the key to getting buyers going, in my opinion, and this is what our team is doing, is I am teaching my partners how to refer me again, because it's a different market. They were referring me different in the last market cycle, and now they're referring me different now. And my favorite script is, you know, it's a really good time to buy a house because the interest rates have dampened demand. And so it was a multiple offer situation earlier this year. And now we have opportunities where the seller will participate in your mortgage payment. Write that down. The seller will participate in your mortgage payment. Because if the number one objective for buyers is that they can't afford the payment, then we have to show them solutions of how they're going to be able to afford the payment. And if a realtor tries to explain it's a rate buy down, and then they go on the internet, like WebMD for real estate, and they try to figure out what this buy down option is, they're going to get all these varying opinions, back to your point about all these different articles, and they're going to come to their own conclusions without the opportunity to talk to a professional to show them how it works. So just tell them enough to get them inspired to talk to your partner. And then your lending partner is your conversion arm of your business right now. Real estate agents need good lending partners right now to convert their buyers to feel comfortable. And how we're doing it is we're teaching them about what's going on in the economy. We're teaching them the principles behind, you're going to buy right now, but it's a Band-Aid loan. It's an acquisition loan to purchase the property. And then that loan, I'm going to refinance for you for free. And it'll probably be in 2023. And here's the data of why you're going to refinance in 2023. I give them all the data. And then I show them, here's your monthly payment on the first year of your 3-2-1 buy down. And I call it a seller subsidy program so that it feels more comfortable. I don't say 3-2-1 because it's a stupid name that confuses consumers.
Yeah.
So I call it a seller subsidy program. Here's your first year mortgage payment, and here's your payment when you refi based on what Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, the Mortgage Bankers Association, the National Association of Realtors, here's all of their projections for interest rates next year. So if we take the average of all of their rates and we put that side by side, here's your year one payment, here's your refinance payment. And by the way, all the money you negotiated for the seller subsidy will be refunded to you at the time of refinance, the part that you did not use. Right? Which is amazing because you're not losing, because they feel like, okay, you pay to buy my rate down, but then I'm just refinancing. So they're not losing the discount that they negotiated.
Or they feel like they're paying more for the house in exchange for getting the seller.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Jess, what's the lump sum average on a $500,000 loan with a 3-2-1?
What does it cost?
Yeah,
20 grand.
amount.
20 grand.
20, right?
Yeah.
More than that. And so if they refinance after the first year, they're getting about half of that back.
Again,
big
based
number.
on the sources I follow, I think interest rates, again, I had said they'd be in the 5s by March. That was
This is
our
right.
bet. And okay, you're closing on, we're writing an offer today. You're going to close in January, right? And your first payment's in March. Okay. One, I could maybe float you down by the time we close potentially, and I'm actually telling people, let's hold off on locking. Let's float because there's a lot of good stuff going on in the market right now. Right. But then once we execute that lock, we'll refinance you for free. And then you'll get this chunk of money. So let's say you only used 3 months of seller subsidy and it was $890 a month. So we used $2,500 of our 20 grand, and the rest of it, guess what? Pays down the principal balance of your loan. So the fact that you feel like you may have paid a little bit higher price to get that seller subsidy, it gets you back to where you would have been if you just would have negotiated a lower price. But the beauty is you get the lower payment. Yeah. And that's where people are like, okay, everyone, I think Amanda told me at dinner that night, the 3,200, 3,200 is the number that everyone wants per month. That's like the
The payment sensitivity.
yeah, it's 3,200. Our common number we hear with almost every buyer is 3,000. Would you guys agree? I'm asking the Ellos on my team. 3,000 is the number that we hear a lot. I can afford it, which is much better because in the last couple of years it was 2,500. Well, you can't even rent a 2-bedroom apartment roughly for that. Yeah. So 3,000 is more reasonable. So then we show them a 3-2-1 buy down first year and they're at 3,200. And they're like, but then when I show them the refi and the money being refunded to them, and I'm saying I can't guarantee this to you, but this is what I think. And here's the data that you can read yourself why I feel that way. They read it. They say, okay, I agree with you. I feel comfortable. And I do want to buy a house while there's blood in the water, while everyone else is scared.
Yeah.
And they agree with like how we talk about it. And so
And
I,
this is why I want every buyer I'm doing business with to have a consult with Jessica. With
Same.
you.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to hear what you are saying to them.
or we need to teach the lenders in the community, and I appreciate that.
But
Thank
it's
you so
true.
much.
You
We
do
are
it
open for
differently.
business.
How many phone calls have you received from lenders lately? God help me, please stop calling me. I just gotta send them to Jess.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a sad time for lenders right now because lenders, what did they do over the last couple of years?
Refi.
They said, you know what? Screw the realtors. They're too hard to work with and demanding. So I'm gonna take a couple years off and I'm gonna refinance my pipeline. And it was very fruitful, very, very fruitful. But then guess what? The market shifts and they need realtors, going back to the realtor builder dynamic.
They just need us all the
Right?
time.
And now we're back in a dynamic with lenders and realtors, and lenders are like, I can't get realtors to call me back, and you're like, well, you completely ghosted them over the last couple of years.
And the answer to that, and it's the same answer for you in your business, if you haven't done a good job of staying in touch with your database, is to say, I owe you an apology.
Yeah,
I haven't done as good of a job as I usually
that's
do
such a good script.
staying
Yes.
in touch with you.
Yep.
So I promise from now on, you'll hear from me more often. I'm going to do a better job of bringing you items of value. And then you have to do it. It's like rearing children. If you don't follow through on the promises you make to your clients, they think you're full of shit. So I just think all of us have to go on an apology tour with some of the people we haven't done as good of a job staying in touch with. I think that will go a long way in our businesses right now.
Yeah.
Realtors, I owe you an apology for going down to 2%. I'll do better next time.
You got literally stuck in a corner.
So
with me.
I'm curious, David, are you guys finding it's a better strategy to lower your prices or to offer financing incentives right now? Because I'm kind of
Why not both?
Are you
So-
I know. Like for my listings, like so we figured out how to get buyers
You
unstuck.
have to lower the
So
price
now-
of showings. You have to.
Yeah, but this is a sports term or a football term, but it's low man wins. We can call it low woman wins too.
Right.
So you do need to get down. You do need to get down to a certain price, and we call ourselves a market builder. And a lot of people I don't think understand what that means. We build to what the market is speaking to us, and so if we're not getting traffic or opportunities or calls or showings from realtors and customers aren't coming in, we say we're too high. So we come down a little bit. So we came down a little bit in early June, then we came down a little bit in July, and then August. And each time we came down, showings pick up, opportunities pick up, we sell some homes, and then it goes away again because the fear is still there. We don't stabilize. We get up into the mid sevens in rates. And then rates come down to 6.5. And over a weekend, we sold 6 homes in the weekend. We had not done that since the end of May.
Wow.
So it truly does show that rates are the driver to me where the fear and the concern is. But really what we're looking at doing is making common sense decisions. And it goes back to collaborative relationships. Jess mentioned a couple of things about being adversarial. I would prefer questions and not dictations. Other builders do this. You should do this. I don't know why you do this. These crazy things that are instead of, hey, I've seen this differently before. Is there a reason you do that? And I will talk your ear off about our strategy behind the decisions that we make, because all we're trying to do is come to an agreement for our mutual customer. And if we're working together and saying, hey, would you be willing to accept a contingency? Okay, tell me, is it listed? Is it ready to be listed? Let's talk through this and find out a solution instead of bickering at each other or being rigid on our end or inflexible on our end, or kind of picking apart things that our buyer doesn't care about. Like, oh, I can't believe you put these plumbing fixtures in here. These are ugly. If your buyer didn't care about it, then what are you doing? So yeah, let's not get in our own way, and so we try to make common sense. We are participating in our mutual buyers' mortgage payments right now on 99.9% of the homes that I'm offering. The only ones that I am not doing that on are ones that I have lowered so unbelievably low that I am down to like my last dollar. If that's in a community where I'm in Fort Collins single family and I'm at 540, I want to get down to 499 because that's going to That's going to pop some showings, right? You're going to see someone, Fort Collins, $499, $990. Well, maybe I can't, because guess what? Everything costs money, guys. Just in case we're unclear, nothing's free in this world. So that 2-1 buy down we're offering to every one of our homes except for maybe 4 or 5 in our entire state costs about 2.25 on the loan amount, right? Average loan amount being about $500,000. You're talking about $11,000, $10,000, $12,000. We are automatically contributing towards participating in their mortgage payments for the first 2 years or the first 3 years, depending on the home. But what if the buyer needs that to get qualified? And maybe we need to raise the price of the home $10,000 in order to give another $10,000 back towards buying down that rate. If explained to you, would a realtor support that? I would hope so, if that gets them into a home and gets them to that payment.
I do think it's a lack of understanding by the realtor.
Yeah.
Sometimes, because the realtor gets real fixated potentially on the price. And I think that it's like, let's find the solution for the buyer, where the builder has a certain bottom line. Like it's like a seller, you all know, right? A seller is like, I can't move if I can't get X, right? Builders have the same dynamic. And so it's like, we got to get creative to say, okay, we could bump the price and then we could pay for the 3-2-1. We get them the payment we want. We get them the cash to close they want. The builder's happy, the realtor's happy. And that's what we're trying to do. But if a realtor isn't willing to allow for the price of the home to be higher to solve to that problem. So I think it's important to be kind of open-minded about how to get buyers into homes right now.
I think we're going to shift gears here pretty soon, right?
Yeah.
I want to say one thing in closing. We had a bumpy 2022. 2023 can't be any bumpier. So, people are like, oh, I had such a great year in real estate last year. You had a wild ride last year. A wild year in real estate. You can do anything. You can do anything now. It's going to be weird, but it's been weird. So
I think it's going to be great. We have more
that's what
inventory.
I mean.
We have more inventory. Yeah, rates are a little higher than they were during the pandemic, but we have more inventory. We're going to have lower rates. Buyers, or listing agents and buyers agents are having to learn to work together.
Yeah.
Like all this hard stuff, we've been going through like a really hard workout and we're exhausted, but we've gotten stronger and we don't realize it yet until we're in the next market cycle.
Yeah. And so it wasn't a cakewalk. And it's not going to be a cakewalk, but we are stronger. I love it.
I think this market's so much better. Oh my gosh.
Right now, today.
Yeah, like
versus,
just
the
in
last
my
couple
life,
years.
like for my
Well, you have
schedule, for
home
my
life,
world.
you have work-life balance. And
Yeah, it's like the going from January to April was so insane that I think I told my husband, like, I just hate to tell you, but you won't see me on a weekend. Like, don't make plans with friends. I'm just not coming. Like, that's just where I am.
Mm-hmm.
And now I just feel like back to normal a little bit. Like I think there's pros and cons.
Yeah.
I think there's pros and cons to it. But I one other thing, just unless I know we have to move on, but I did want to hear what all of your dialogues and all of yours too, if you have them, when people say, wow, how prices are really coming down. And because it feels like it and it looks like it, and all you see is price reduce, price reduce, price reduce. And then the media tells you that they are, but it's not really true if you look at the actual statistics. And so I would love to hear when, the question usually is just how is the market, which we hear all the time. But lately I've heard a lot of like, wow, so prices are really coming down. And I'd just love to hear what all of your responses are.
Amanda's pulling out her data.
It's
I
okay,
know.
go stuff.
If you ask a question like that, you're going to get a graph.
I
It's just like-
think I'm just equating it to you're not paying more right now. So I am definitely encouraging all of my buyers to get out and buy. I'm calling every investor that I've known that has wanted to get into investing in the real estate market. I'm getting them off the couch, to get out and get in the market. And instead of telling people that, I do tell them, hey, right now you can negotiate.
Yeah.
And I think that's absolutely true. I don't know that prices are coming down significantly, but you can negotiate and you're not paying more. So whereas you were going to pay 10% more, you might get list price, or wow, we might even get a little bit lower. This is an amazing time to buy. Like where I'm struggling with is more or less with my listings and my sellers, like because they're saying, do I drop and dump or do I hold steady and wait? And
Right.
I'm on the
Is
hold
January
steady
gonna be
and
better?
wait since we're almost to the first quarter, but I am seeing people dropping and dumping, and I don't necessarily feel like that's necessary personally because I think we're right around the corner. It's kind of like right when COVID started and you're like, oh my gosh, we got to get rid of this property now. We don't know what's coming. And then, the people who did sell in that, April, May timeframe left so much money on the table that I kind of feel like maybe we're right on the cusp of that, inventory crisis again when, it picks up next year. So I'm kind of on the hold and stay steady line, but I'm interested to hear what everyone else thinks. Like, are you suggesting significant price reductions and dumping properties, or are you saying to hold steady?
I think we have to teach sellers about how price of homes and interest rates go together. That's what I think.
Right. Yes, but Joe DeVito always said, people don't buy because of the rate. They buy because of life. They buy because they buy because they are having triplets, or they're getting married, or they're getting divorced. So it matters what they can afford, but they aren't really tied together.
No, but as the interest rates go down, price reductions are going to go down. As interest rates go up, price reductions go up. And I think you have to teach sellers to pay attention to what's going on in the interest rate environment.
That's because people are so payment sensitive now more than they've ever
That's
been.
exactly what it is. The interest rate is the demand lever. So the reason that we've had price reductions is because our demand lever is not as high, substantially.
That's where it comes into us trying to balance the market. We are so I have a little bit of a different perspective than you all do, and it's great to hear what your thinking is, and it makes complete sense. But we look at everything from a macro perspective. I have communities with multiple home sites, multiple specs, and then we look at a division, and we'll be looking at 190 homes under construction that are unsold, right? And so when I call ourselves a market builder, it's about, okay, we are going to take less. We are going to bring the prices down in order to combat the interest rates and balance that out to bring more affordability into the market, because we just want to keep the market moving. Whereas from a micro perspective and an individual homeowner and one of your sellers, it may not make sense. So we are bringing our prices down, which builders are what, 14% of the market or something like that. We're not a
But are you going to
big
keep
part of the
bringing
market.
your prices down if your
We can't.
contracts pick up?
No. And when interest rates, I wanted to make sure this is clear. There's a reverse correlation between interest rates and home prices. So as interest rates come down, guess what's going to happen? Prices go back up. Again, you cannot refinance a home price. So if prices are down from the builder perspective right now, and kind of what I'm unfortunately seeing is the blood in the water mentality. If we've dropped a home $40,000 to bring it into a certain enticing price point, and we're offering 2 points on the loan amount to participate in the mortgage payment, and some buyers coming in and getting not maybe professional coaching from the realtor saying, this is, hey, here's are the comps. I already got built-in equity. You're going to be at the payment you want. They're coming in and sabotaging the deal by offering another $50,000 off that I can't do. So let's look at what's the market going to bear, and let's try to make a collaborative, common sense decision. Is this a correct purchase for you, and not trying to take advantage of the situation like builders are accused of on the other extreme, right? Is still negotiate, still ask for flexibility, but if the home works for the customer, it's within the market, maybe let's not try to sabotage is what we're seeing some of happening. Maybe you come in and, can I get a fridge, washer, dryer, blinds, finishing this out, rear yard landscaping, help with the mortgage payment, work on a contingency, these types of
You
common
would
sense
take that deal
things.
if I brought that to you right now.
You bring that deal to me, but we can't go down forever. And when the rates start to go down, and when we start to sell more homes, yes, as a market builder, the market will have changed, and prices are going to start going up again. You said
Tomorrow.
what was the
Tomorrow.
it's more about time in the market and not timing the market. All these people want to try to time the stock market too, right? I mean, get in,
Just
build well.
And the answer to your question, Kelly, is the average price of a single family detached home in October of 18, 502, 19, 515, 20, 560, 21, 660, 22, $735. That's up 12% year over year. So you could buy an average single family home in Greater Denver in October of 2018 for the same price as today's attached condo price, 502. You have equity baked into your number already. The sellers just need us to peel their fingers off of it one
I heard a
one
tactic.
finger at a time.
I heard a tactic I want to share that I think is really brilliant, which is when you're going over a net sheet with your client, show them their ROI on their down payment and like map that out for them so that it shifts their perspective and they're not looking at dollars lost, but they're looking at dollars gained. And I think that's how you can kind of change the dynamic of their perspective on that.
It's beautiful. Yeah. Okay. What's next, Jess?
I think we're gonna try to involve the audience in our dialogue. I know we have a lot of different opinions of what's gonna happen with the market, so I would love to hear from some of you that have strong opinions or data, or anything that we were talking about today that you want to talk more on. And Elise is gonna be our helper here.
Hi, Pamela.
I would like to know where all the cash buyers went, because I would say just unrealistic numbers of cash deals we've done in the last couple of years, and they're not to be found now. So I would just love to see other people's
They don't want
opinion
to
about
take
that.
money out of the stock market.
And isn't it an ironic thing
Mhm.
that the cash buyers were crawling in the market?
And they
that
should
was
be
all
in
we
it.
sold
They
to
should be in
when
the
rates were
market now.
2%.
This is the time. It
I
wasn't the
have
time.
cash closings. We have 3 cash closings this month, so they're still there.
And if you look at what
But it could be the market though, if they didn't have it
They
liquid.
think it's going to go down
And
more.
yeah, and that in they're struggling with not wanting to sell, they may want to keep the cash in the market till it gets
That's an
better.
inflationary consequence. People are afraid to let go of their money right now.
So there was something that I read, that there's this negative wealth effect that people are, if they think that their assets are going down, so whether that's your home or your money in the market, in the stock market, then they will stop getting, taking out debt, spending money, going on vacations, doing things, right? They just stop. If they think rightly or not, that their assets going down, that they just kind of stop, and they called it a negative wealth effect. I don't know if anyone's heard of that or can speak to that, but I think that's kind of what you're talking about. It's like where they just kind of go, you need to hold off. Like the stock market's been up and down, it's been crazy. Think it's going to get better. Let's not liquidate the funds to go buy that home right now.
Yeah, I was just thinking about all the times in the spring that we would get beat out by cash buyers.
Oh, yeah.
And
They weren't really cash.
Really cash.
well,
They
no,
were
a
those
lot of it
programs.
was real cash. I mean, we had
Were
a
they?
lot of real cash.
It was home life.
Oh,
Yes,
grandma's
it was.
cash or home
Yeah,
light.
it was their family's cash a lot of
Yeah.
time, but
I think there was a lot of
Maybe they're
family
not-
money,
she
and I
has
have
a
grandma
family
ain't letting
cash.
go of her purse right now.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
You had a question?
Say your name too, please.
My name is Dustin. I'm with Remax of Boulder. Dustin Segrello. Hey. So the question was, do buyers think that prices are coming down right now? And I have the same answer I have for every real estate question, and it depends. And it works for everything, every question ever, because then it depends, right? Because we have to ask more questions. If we go out and we see the houses that you want to see, there's 7 of them, and you don't like any of them, then what's the price? It doesn't matter. They don't want to buy it, right? So that doesn't matter what the price is. The one house that comes this week, and it is the one they want, are they going to reduce their price by $50,000 this weekend? Absolutely not. So it depends. Where are you at? If you want to buy the one that nobody else wants, then fine. Let's talk about a price reduction. Let's make that real for you. But if you think the one that comes on this week, you're going to wait 2 weeks from now or 4 weeks from now for a price reduction, no, not going to happen. Somebody else is going to buy it. So
I call that the inventory shuffle
yeah.
in my world, and that is that you buy the nicest piece of inventory for your money in the market today.
Yeah.
And so if there are 7 shittier pieces of inventory in the market, the one that's the nicest goes away, and then the next nicest is the next to sell at the best price.
Right.
And that's all consumer behavior stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then the other question I ask is, when was the best time to buy a house? And then the answer, of course, is 20 years ago. So when's the next best time to buy a house? And the answer is today.
Yeah.
Robin Gerlach. Jess, I have two questions for you. Obviously, inflation does impact the mortgage rates, and not necessarily the Fed funds rate isn't necessarily correlated, but it does impact mortgage-backed securities. What is the Fed mainly basing their decisions on when they're making these? Is it the consumer price index? Is it the PPI unemployment, which isn't quite where they want it to be? What do you
About
see
doing
them?
the rate hikes?
Yeah,
They're doing it on CPI.
CPI.
CPI,
Okay.
for sure. Yeah,
So that's something that we can kind of track. That's a data point that we can track
100%.
based on their decisions.
And I
Okay.
can send everybody some information that attended today that I follow, and I've sent it to a lot of my partners. And I think there's a few big things coming up right now. So we've got PPI on Friday. I may have mentioned this. CPI next week and a rate hike next week. And the rate hike is going to be smaller than they were prior. So the Fed is watching inflation come down, and they're just trying to slow the economy down. They're basically what you guys were talking about earlier with the cash buyers. They're trying to make people fearful to spend their money, so it slows the economy down, and that's basically what they're doing.
Yeah.
From
They
what
wanted us
we're-
to stop consuming.
Yeah. And from what we're hearing is by quarter 2, they might say, okay, we're in a recession and rates come down to the 5. Is that kind of what you predict could happen?
Yeah, again, I'm thinking March. That's just
March.
my personal opinion. We went from 7.3 to 6.5 really fast. And so, and again, we've got these 3 things coming up. So I'm saying March is kind of my guess on when we'll see rates probably in the 5s. But here's what happens when you get rates in the 5s. We go from a temporary buy down to a what?
Straight buy down.
Permanent buy down. Look, you can get a 4% rate with a seller credit. Let's execute. And the market's going to pick up because people are like, I get my forever rate. Because people still have some apprehension about a temporary buy down, because you have to paint a picture for them of like, all right, this is your first year and then you'll refi, and there's still fear there. So the really fearful clients have apprehension. But if I can get a permanent rate at 4 or 4.5 and I like my payment, I'm going.
You bet.
And it seems like the 5% mortgage rate is kind of the tipping point where prices, and then maybe the prices start picking back up, conforming loan limits are going up. When do you foresee a 50-year mortgage?
Ooh, 50-year. Yeah, I don't know, to be honest. I think that I'm not sure I see that, to be honest.
Oh, baby, it's
Yeah.
coming.
You think?
Yeah, because they'll pay 21% on their credit card debt.
I don't know. I think
I
the
hope
40
not.
will become more mainstream. The 40's not mainstream at all right now, like not adopted by Fannie Freddie.
But it is possible, right?
It is possible, but the rate makes it so cost prohibitive that
Right.
nobody does it.
Right.
So I think the 40 will become mainstream. I don't know about 50.
But we're living in a society where people are told they'll own nothing and like it. You can rent an Uber, you can rent a scooter downtown, and you can rent a house in the 86 build for rent communities that are coming across the Denver metro area. And so young people are told that they will own nothing and they'll like it. They'll be so happy when they can like throw their water bottles away and just rent a scooter downtown and take an Uber there. Okay?
Responsibility's a burden, right?
That's right.
The average American retires with $87,000 to their name.
Okay, so now the point is, who gives a shit about a 50-year mortgage? These people are all being told that everything is about what they can afford now.
I think it's the investors that buy mortgage-backed securities that's the problem.
Yeah.
Like they don't want that kind of.
Until
Yeah.
the investors who buy mortgage-backed securities are the millennials.
No one pays off them. I mean, very few.
When they move.
I have some friends that do, but yeah. Yeah.
The perception of money has changed, there's no doubt, right?
Yeah.
Like, people buy stuff they can't afford today, all the time, as evidenced by the hottest Black Friday on the books. No, people bought Black Friday because they were afraid of a rail strike, not because they were like, I'm not gonna be able to get my Christmas, so I'll put it on a credit card, and I bought it on Black Friday. And then the rail strike they were worried about the getting their goods. So they'll spend money no matter. I just feel like we have a real problem. We have a real unhealthy relationship with money in America today.
Sure. And consumers, because the average consumer has $87,000 in debt when they retire, they don't talk to a financial advisor, so they don't come up with a plan. And so the closest thing to a financial advisor that a consumer talks to is a mortgage professional.
That's right.
And most mortgage professionals, you know, have a limited amount of experience and they're just selling debt and they're not giving advice about why to purchase real estate and how to build a real estate portfolio and why you need to build wealth.
But that's because every Merrill Lynch guy just wants you to put your money in the stock market.
Right.
And so, the second best advisor to them is a real estate agent who's saying invest in community, invest in a house, in something that appreciates. NAR has statistics around this too, and they say the average renter in America is worth about $6,000. The average homeowner in America is worth about $210,000. So you can just tell people, you tell young people that to
Yeah,
start
exactly.
and ask them if that'll buy them a new scooter.
Yeah, which side do you want to be on?
Who's next? Who else has a question?
Or a comment. I want to have a collaborative dialogue.
Yeah.
Hi, Dana Hins with Remax Alliance. What do you think is going to happen with investor loans? Like people who want to buy second houses or rentals? Because I know for a while those loans weren't there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that loan programs ebb and flow with risk in the market, right? And so when COVID broke out, David called me and, you know, there was massive fear in the market. So a lot of loan programs went away overnight, right? And so I think that the way that the mortgage industry works is it tightens in risky markets and it loosens in less risky markets. So I think if we have equity in homes and consumer confidence is strong and the market's moving, I think that those loan programs will open up. Now, they did make adjustments to loan level pricing adjustments for second homes, which was really impactful to the market. And that happened last year. Huge adjustment for second home where it used to be the exact same rate for a primary home and a secondary home. It just had to be logical to an underwriter. And now they have changed that. And it's like over 200 basis points different between a primary home and a second home. And so of course that's dampened demand on secondary homes. But
Yes, and that's a problem because you want to buy an investment property, you're going to have to borrow money at 2 points higher to buy the investment property, but BlackRock's bleeding money. They're dumping money in, I mean, so they're going to absorb all this inventory. Something like 22% of houses under BlackRock bought 22% of houses under 500,000 in Atlanta last year.
well, and I would encourage you all to go look at what they're doing right now. What are the richest people in America doing in the real estate market?
What are they doing?
BlackRock. They are on a huge quest to buy right now. They're buying a ton of real estate. And so that's what you tell your consumer, your sellers, your buyers. That's what you tell them. Let's look at what the billionaires are doing with real estate right now because they have data. They have, you know, and
And the Chinese were beating us to it too.
totally.
I mean, you look at the West Coast, people were coming over from China just to buy American real estate and sitting on empty real estate. Finally, the municipalities in Washington state said, you can't just let this thing sit here empty.
Yeah.
And think of the money the Chinese made in American real estate in the last 5 years with the prices I just talked about. If that isn't reason enough for Americans to buy real estate, I don't know what is.
Who else has a question or comment? Okay.
Ross Blahnik. So, Jess, you know that I sometimes hesitate to prognosticate or predict when I'm talking to my consumers. Just mostly, I don't want to be wrong.
Yeah.
And also, I don't want to feed them, false hope or
Right.
whatever it is. Currently, with the interest rate environment we're in, I think it's safe to say that there is that opportunity to not have as much competition at the current rate. At what point, if you're willing to prognosticate, at what interest rate do we feel like there is a tide change and you've now lost that opportunity to be in that low competition environment? If I were to tell one of my buyers today, while the rate's higher, at some point the rate will lower but you'll then lose that opportunity to be in that lower competition environment. If you or any of you are willing to kind of predict what that rate might be.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I'd be curious what my team thinks too, because they're living and breathing rate all day. I think once a buyer can get in the permanent buy down, I really think that's our threshold because of there's still apprehension with the temporary buy down is our solution right now. Because why does a permanent buy down not make sense? Does anyone know?
Because they're not deep enough.
No, explain why. So you negotiate 20 grand to go from 6.5 to 5 3/4. Let's say, I don't know, I'm spitfiring a little bit.
Yeah.
You're still going to refi your 5 3/4 rate.
That's right.
And the money that the seller you negotiated is gone.
That's right.
So permanent buy downs, unless they need it to qualify, that's the difference, then you have to do a temporary buy down. That's the only option in today's world in order to make transactions happen. And so the minute people can get that permanent rate, so I would say 20 grand to buy down to maybe 4.5. Let's say 5.5. I think that's our threshold is
Yeah.
around 5.5 is my guess. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just when you do this buy down, does that prohibit you from then getting inspection credits and things like that too? Does it go towards that total? Because if you use all the amount that you have allowed,
Yes. So
that was
there
a
is
question I
something
had.
that's called an interested party contribution, and you have maximum interested party contributions that can be negotiated, and it varies by loan program. So conventional with 10% down is 6%, FHA is 6%, VA is 4%, investment homes are 2%. So that's the most that any party, realtor, lender, seller can give a buyer. And so we just have to be mindful of that when we're negotiating. So if you do negotiate with your lender a temporary buy down at the time of purchase, you have to be very careful when you do your inspection that because people are getting big inspection credits right now in this market. So you just have to be really careful that you're not exceeding that interested party contribution max. The other thing is the 3-2-1 is only available for people that have 10% down or more because the interested party contribution with less than 10% down is only 3% of the price of the home. And the 3-2-1, the cost is a little over 4% of the of the loan amount. So, yeah, but I think that the minute rates fall to 5.5, I think it's gonna just go because we have so many buyers waiting for rates to fall. Even though you tell them not to, they can't afford the payment, you know. And if they can't do a 3-2-1. A lot of the buyers that are not buying right now are the buyers that couldn't buy in our last market cycle. People that have 50 grand or less, people that are VA, people that have contingencies, like those people are not buying right now and they should be. And they need to hear from you. Your window of opportunity is shrinking to buy. And let me show you the data of why that is. You need to pull the trigger before we flip back into our next that other market that we're in.
That's the part about getting unstuck. Like that's that dialogue of like trying to explain to your buyers now that you need to get, I love how you just said that, like that you need to get into the market before the rest of them all hop back in, become your competition again, and then refi later in the year. But I think that's it. The buyers right now really do not get that.
Because they're not hearing from us.
They're not hearing it because we aren't maybe sure if that's going to happen or not.
Yeah.
I mean, you weren't sure,
I
and she's not sure. You're just
Yeah.
guessing.
Oh,
right?
Well, I
all
think
of our
Ross-
crystal balls are like
Totally.
it's like leaking out the bottom, right?
Yeah, I think Ross's comment of like I'm apprehensive to prognosticate. I think that is like the massive issue of what's going on right now is no one wants to tell their consumer with confidence this is what's happening.
Right. Because you don't really know. And
But-
it's scary. Things go up and down, and you don't want to be wrong, of course. You don't want
But
to
what if
mislead
you
them.
just name that to your client?
Say, I don't want to
We're
be
in
wrong.
unprecedented
This is what's
times. We had this happen, this dynamic of COVID, and now we haven't had interest rates in the 6s and 7s in 20 years. We're in unprecedented times. Real estate went up 40% over the last couple of years. Why don't we just name that to our consumers and say, I don't have a crystal ball.
Because unless they're dead, they're like, yeah, just hang tight then.
Well, I don't have a crystal ball, but here's this guy, Barry Habib. He's been the 3-time crystal ball winner by Zillow over the last 3 years. Here's his opinions of what's happening.
Yeah.
And I send my clients that data
Yeah.
because I don't want to be the one. I'm like, I can't guarantee it, but here's some information you could educate yourself around.
Right.
That video is amazing, by the way.
Yeah.
Very.
It was good.
It is an hour long. I promise you. Think of it as a podcast.
Yeah, it's worth your time.
Play it.
On a
We
walk.
can get something set
Go on
up.
a
Play it
walk,
on a
listen
walk.
to
Play
it.
it while you work. I played it while I was answering emails, and it was just
Why is
in
it
the
so
background.
great? I haven't seen it.
He's talking about historical data over the last 50 years of the correlation between interest rates and inflation and building wealth. It goes over every reason why now is the time to buy, and it'll have you
so
ready to
good.
run through a wall for your clients after you're done.
What's the name? Who's the name?
I'll send it to you.
We'll send
send
it
it
to
to
everyone.
I'll email that out to everyone here.
Amazing video.
Yeah.
I have a question for the crowd or for anybody who's been at this a lot longer than me. We used to talk about a balanced market as being 80 days, right?
Or 6 months
I
of
thought 6
inventory.
months.
Or 6
Yeah.
months of inventory.
Yeah.
Knowing what we know now about the speed in which the human condition is expected to move,
Feels like it should be short.
is it going to be shorter coming
Yeah.
into the next decade?
We always say that the balanced market is like 4 to 6 months, and then the buyer's market is after 6 months. And here we are at 34 days on the market right now is average. I don't know. Like it seems
It
like a
feels like an
balanced
eternity,
market
right?
should, it's an eternity. It
Yeah.
feels like a balanced market should be 3 months, maybe 2
I
and a half.
listened to Megan Aller answer this question, and I can't remember her answer, which is so embarrassing.
Her answer is still 6 months, 4 to 6 months.
No, oh, 4 to 6 months. Yeah.
Maybe,
Okay.
I don't know, it just seems like, I don't know, it doesn't seem appropriate. I'd love to hear what you guys think.
That's because you remember we were like filling flyer boxes and we'd have signs out there for 6 months. And,
When was this?
like in the early days.
The Love Boat days.
I remember these days. I know a lot of you do, but the truth of the matter is that you'd show a house in a neighborhood. You'd go home, you pull comps, you'd find out there were 5 more in the neighborhood that were for sale. And guess what they wanted to do? They wanted to wait till next Saturday to go look at the next 5. And so then it was like, you could show 60 houses a week and sell nothing. And now it's like I could show 1 house a week and sell a house a week. So this is all just a recalibration for us. But those days of 6 months of inventory in a balanced market, I just don't know how we ever go back to the days of people just taking that long to make a consumer decision. I feel like we're rewired or something.
On the market, they'll take that long to make a decision.
Well, if we get to 24,000 houses, yeah.
When we get there.
I think
Will we get there?
I would ask David.
When?
David,
No.
when are you building?
Don't
I
say
don't-
no, just say when. Because eventually
say
we get to
it's a time.
24,000 houses.
I mean, no,
I'm
when?
talking about like
We've
2035.
underbuilt for
Yeah.
14, 15 years now.
Yeah.
It's at
In the
least
United
12.
Yeah,
States,
14
not just
years straight
Colorado.
of a yeah.
We've underbuilt. So
Undersupplied.
we are trying to keep building. Now, again, we were talking about what are other builders going to do that do not have any appetite for risk or are trying to be risk averse and they're pulling back. They're going to stop building homes. I can promise you many builders are slowing down what they're doing significantly. If you're not slowing down a little bit, you're not paying attention. So let's not be crazy. We are slowing down a little bit. Some builders are slowing down a lot. That's going to make the supply problem worse, which means time on market is not going to go up as significantly and supply of months. And I think differentiating that is important. By the way, supply of months is if you would not put another home on the market, this is how long it would take to sell out of the entire supply of homes.
That's one
So-
one month, 15 days right now as it stands.
Is that really what it's at?
Yes.
Figured it'd be about 2 by now. But
It's not.
and what were we at in April? 7 days, essentially 6 or 7 days. It was
Well,
like
we
a
were
week, less than a
selling
week.
5,000 houses a month and
It
we
was
had
less than a
1,900
week.
houses for sale. So you do the
Let's see how crazy April was. Let's talk about this for a second. That is, if no one put another listing on the market in the Colorado market for 6 days, there would be no homes to
houses.
sell. Do you understand how insane that is?
That's right.
That is where we were.
Yeah.
So where we are at now is still very low at 45 days. So if you don't list a home for 45 days, there will be no homes. That's essentially what that means. I agree.
One of
Maybe
the
3-4
questions
months.
was, at what point are we in the tipping point? And as I sit here in this chair, I think it is now. I honestly think that because rates peaked, There were a whole contingent of sellers who didn't like what 34 days on the market felt like. So what did they do? They withdrew their house. So now inventory is going to start to deplete.
More than it does normally this time of year.
Yeah, 'cause
Right.
There's some seasonality to it.
There's some seasonality to it. We're going to come into January with a whole bunch of people who are confused by the fall. We just came off a roller coaster, so Pam's going to the beach. You know, I mean, she's like, I can't take it anymore.
Wait, and lenders have laid off all their team.
Mhm.
Every single team member they have, they're like a one-man show.
Which is
right
why
now.
they're calling us. And now is not the
We
time
did
for you
not.
to pull
We
back
did not.
either.
No.
You know,
I only spammed you all week long. But now
it's
I'm done.
okay.
Well, and isn't the supply chain catching up too? So, I mean,
Getting better.
I feel like the supply chain's getting
The
better
boats are
as
moving
well.
through the
Yeah.
harbor.
Yeah, I mean, unless the rails stop moving. For
Right.
real.
Yeah, true.
30% of our goods move by rail.
I think it's going to be really interesting next year. I really do. I think it.
What were the rates in 2019? Summer 2019 feels like it was harder to sell real estate.
We went to 5% in December of 19.
And I'm sure the days on market were more.
But people have a different perception of rate now because
No.
they've seen
But
7.
perception is not reality. That is the problem. We have to figure out how to rate.
Days on market in 2019.
I got the days on market 2019 right here.
December 2019 felt like that.
December of 2019, we were 34 days on market, which is where we're at
Which is
today.
exactly where we are right now.
And then what happened? I guess
The rates were
COVID happened.
flat, right?
No, but what happened was,
Yeah. They were.
you
Very
remember
low
we had the
so-
inverted yield curve. Do you remember that? That was November of 18 or 19. We had the inverted yield curve. Rates were going to go up. The market was going to slow. It was time for a cool down.
And then COVID happened.
And then the Fed start bombing rates because I think they knew things were going weird. Oh, we come out swinging in 2020. Do you remember we were locking clients in the spring of 2020 in the 2s and 3s before we knew there was a China virus? Right? So like all of a sudden we were like, oh my gosh, this is so crazy. We had a ton of inventory under contract.
Yeah. I mean, we have that 10-year kind of traditional 10-year real estate cycle coming up in 2019. Because if we were at 2008, we should have, by 2018, 19, we should have been coming back around to our traditional kind of ebb and flow, and it didn't happen.
Right.
Well, which is why we've defied everything that has felt normal to us. Anybody who feels like they have any sense of rhythm in their real estate business is like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know anymore. Those of you who've been at this a long time, maybe more than 20 years, doesn't it feel like you can't predict the way things are going to go?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And how do you solve that? How do you resolve that in your own mind?
She's
I mean, you know, what you guys are all saying has been absolute, it's everything that I've realized and know and have tried to say to people. Like Kelly, the media is killing us. I mean, it's awful. You know, and people are listening to that and they're going, oh my God, was his one?
Aren't rates dropping and aren't they going into the toilet? Oh my God, they're going down 10% in Denver. And that's not true.
It's not true.
You know, and I'm going, okay, sure, whatever, because this is an ex-realtor friend of mine, whatever. And then I agree with you also on the days on market. I've had a couple of listings. One I lost, and is because they wouldn't listen to me about price. And, you know, you think, okay, so if you bring it down to here, you'll get sold. Well, now they need to bring it down to here.
Right.
It's not listed by me. It's still on the market. Fine. And another
better to
was,
be the second one.
what's that?
It's always better to be the second realtor they hire.
True enough, but still, they still haven't sold it.
Yeah.
Yes, they should have stayed with me.
They should.
And then the other one is the days on market thing. I agree with because I've got a listing now that will close thankfully on Friday. They've been on the market about 60 days.
Yeah.
And that was impressive and long for a condo in Boulder. That's bizarre.
Yeah.
You know, and I keep thinking about you is that, sorry, I got a lot of comments. Date the rate, buy the house. I love that. I've been seeing that all over social media and I've been just kind of, you know, enjoying that piece. And then David?
Yeah.
I looked at Lennar once. I sold a Lennar house earlier in January and I was very nice to them, very kind. 1%, fine. I said, one day you're going to need us again.
Mhm.
They're back, by the way.
Oh, what do you mean?
Did
They
come
they
up?
raised back up.
Yes,
Did
they
they?
did.
Yeah,
They
They
look
did.
at
I
things a
know.
little bit
I know.
differently. I don't want to.
I know.
of
I know,
course.
the
You know,
reps
now
of
we
what
need
we
to
get
bring
I'll
now.
people
basketball
to
in
them.
private when I'm not on camera. So if you want to talk to me later, but yeah, they
But
look
there's
at it a little
some bad,
differently.
there's some bad juju that was
Juju
created there.
about it.
Absolutely.
And that's why we were talking. I was like, I
Absolutely.
want you to know, in the real estate community there, when that's what happens, we talk about it.
Yeah.
That's
Like,
right.
we talk amongst
And
like
it's
an
Do
elephant.
you know in some markets they literally just didn't pay. It was zip.
Zero.
Oh my gosh.
In
really?
California,
Someone-
they're
Yeah.
still fixing
Zero.
One of
I
the
promise.
reps
Whoa.
did do that. Yeah. one of
Okay,
the
I had
reps
one more.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
And the other thing is, having been in this business a long time,
Yeah.
I realize very clearly that it is a business of relationships. We all have to like each other. We all have to be nice to each other.
Yes.
That's all, because one day we're all going to need each other.
Right.
And, I had a gal years and years and years ago. We had one really good deal. I'm on my way to show one of her listings, a condo in Broomfield. And I called her and I said, by the way, we're probably going to write on this. She said, okay, fine. It's under contract. I went, excuse me? She said, yeah, it's under contract to you. No problem. She literally said that. I brought her the contract later that day and we went under contract because we'd had a really good relationship on a different deal. She trusted me. She respected me.
Yeah.
And, oh, and then one more thing too, honesty. You're right. We all need to be honest and talk to each other. That's it.
Great. Yep. Love it.
No games.
Hallelujah.
So we had a question over here from Laura. I'm going to stand because my tush hurts. My name is Laura Fuller, and I work at Kentwood Real Estate. And I have a comment, yes, and a question. My first comment is thank you for having us. This has been amazing. I think the entire time I've just agreed with everything y'all have had to say. I've been nodding so much, I think I'm going to need Botox in my neck now. But my question is, and I have spoken to my dear friend Elise about this, that I'm a huge team player and I like to call myself an expert in real estate. I'm not an expert in lending. I'm not an expert in title. And I need partners to do that with. So from a lending perspective, Jess, I am trying to know enough to be able to sound like I'm educated to my clients, both buyers and sellers. And I guess I was wondering, do you find yourself fully educating your partners, buyers, and also their sellers? Because I have a lot of listings right now where I'm trying to speak to my sellers about 321 and concession and some of the other neat.
I love this question. So,
We think so much about the buyers on the lending side, but I need a partner like you to really educate my sellers too.
So how I show up for my partners is I'm a problem solver. So I identify by talking to my partners what their number one problem is right now, and then I try to solve to it. Okay. So what I've recently done without really telling my partners I was going to do this is I have someone on my team going through the MLS and seeing which of my partners have a listing on the market that's been active for 2 weeks or more without any that's still active. And without asking, we're sending a templated email that they can send to a buyer's agent that is just kind of some things to say about this option to do like a temporary buy down option. There's some links to the Barry Habib video, and then I am creating that flyer that's year one of the 321 and the refi in just one flyer, and it's specific to their listing. And it's got their listing information on
Hey,
it.
that's why I got that email.
Yep, you got that. Pamela, I've sent them to my partners and just saying like, here, try, I hope this works for you to reverse prospect on behalf of your seller. Because I think, again, my friend Nikki told me that 92% of realtors haven't sold in an interest rate environment higher than 4%.
And more than 45 days on market.
Yeah, and more than 45 days on market. So agents just need education, and their lending partners should be educating them, but their lender partners are overwhelmed right now because they don't have as much team. And so I think it's just a byproduct of where we're at. But I think that giving that reverse prospecting opportunity to buyers agents that need the education, I'll talk to listing agents where we've written an offer and a listing agent will say, why do you need $20,000? And I get that question all the time. And I'm like, well, right now rates are X, right? And my buyer can afford X, and the house has been on the market for 3 weeks and they like the house and they'd like to buy it. And this is the difference between them being able to afford and write an offer on this home or not. So, we understand that it's not ideal for your seller, and you can roll the cost of a 3-2-1 into the price of a home too. And you can do appraisal gap coverage on that as well. So if you have fears on appraisal on both sides, you can solve to that too. So I think it's just educating buyer's agents that are on the other side of your transaction about what might be possible to make it work on both sides,
I think part of the problem was, and correct me if I'm wrong for all of you, but when we used to do seller concessions, they were like $5,000.
Right.
Right?
Right.
I mean, don't you
That's
remember
so
writing that
true.
number in that
Yes.
little concession and this is what, 15 years ago? But they that's when I will admit that when I first started seeing 20 and $40,000 concessions, I was
Yeah.
like, are you kidding? I'm
Yeah.
expecting 4.
Yeah.
Because that's what I used to write.
Right.
And that was a temporary buy down, right? I mean, that wasn't back when we used to do it the day. And the prices were lower, and it was 15 years ago. But I think that's part of it, is that we used to write these for $5,000 concession was like normal. And so getting these $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 concessions seems out of line. But it's not with where the prices are now.
Yeah.
And where
And
the
I
rates
think
are.
you should call the lender and say, what's more important, this concession or the price? Because I will say to the listing agents I talk to, like, this concession's critical. I never say, like, if you counter us. Obviously, I don't want to open up that verbiage with this listing agent, but I'm like, it's really important that we hold on to this. This is really the difference of this client affording the home. So I'm kind of like playing poker face on behalf of my buyer that they have to have it. And I think it's important that you start to talk to the lender about why they have that. But, I do think the reason I was bringing that up earlier is that I think that the buyer agent community just hasn't sold in this environment. It's new to all of us, just like appraisal gap. Like, one of my top buyers agents I work with, I tried to explain how I solved to an appraisal gap. She's like, I don't get it. Like, we do, like, I don't know, 20 deals a year together. I don't do it. I don't get it, but I know you do. So I'll send my clients, I'll talk to you about it. So it's like, I think that, it's education in the market right now in this new environment we're in. And it's going to change back to where we need to talk about appraisal gaps again.
Well, isn't it true that some of the programs, the seller has to pay it? And some of them.
The temporary buy down programs, the seller has to pay. It is a seller subsidy program. That's what it's called.
So when the market shifts and the sellers don't want, that won't be available anymore. So I think that's another thing to get out to them, is there will be a time when you won't be able to get 20 grand from a seller.
That is when you're watching average days on market go down, that's when you're talking to your people. Hey, our window's shrinking, it's shrinking, it's shrinking. Like, I think the answer to getting the market unstuck is data, personally. I think everyone should know their data and have their data, like Miss Amanda here, and watch average days on market, watch the close to list price ratio. What else should we be watching besides those? Absorption rate.
Median home price, obviously.
Yeah. And just being able to speak to that on an educated manner to your buyers and sellers.
I have one something. We have a huge gap between ourselves as a builder and buyers and realtors about home price. I think home price is generally irrelevant. Somebody walks in and they say, I need a 4-bedroom home and it needs to be under $600,000. Why? Have you talked to a lender? How did you come to that conclusion? Because that is a meaningless statement if you really look back at it.
Unless all they have in the bank is 120,000 and
Yeah.
their grandfather told them they had to put 20% down.
But if we and they say, okay, this home's at 620, I want it, so why don't you lower it down to 600? Well, if I can show them that taking that $20,000 and putting it towards combating the rate, which is combating their payment, it will lower that payment much more strongly than taking $20,000 out of the home. And I'm seeing a huge gap in education and understanding that what's the average person in a home right now? 7 to 9 years. Are we talking about that? I think that's even high, by the way. I think
Definitely, it's gone up, not down.
it has.
Yeah, it's gone up. People
Yeah.
are moving.
I think the times of people staying in fulfilling a 30-year mortgage are in the
Yeah.
1% chance at this point in time. So why does the home price over 30 years matter? And that's not even the home price over 30 years. A $600,000 home with a 5% rate in year 30 is probably what? $950,000, $1 million. So why aren't we talking about that?
Again, I
And-
think it goes back to data, like being able to show the client appreciation, being able to show the client payment versus price. I get that a lot. Like, what price homes are you looking at? 650. Why? I don't know.
It's always a
That's
round
what I
number
like.
too. It's always a round number. It's always 550, 600,
Because I have to
650.
put something in Zillow when I type in that
Yeah.
price, so that's what I did.
What else?
So you guys, it's 12:30.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that there's a lot of questions that not get answered. So like I said in the beginning, email them to me. I'm going to forward them all to Jess. So
It's awesome.
thank you, everyone.
Was today helpful? Is this helpful? Awesome.